All right, welcome back, everyone. We're finishing up. We got our last bit of material. We've got a really short video today as well because, truthfully, it's not too much. There's really one slide that's a little bit more relevant that we need to cover. So let's go back to where we were. We were discussing about the oblique plane. The oblique plane cuts at a 45-degree angle. As I mentioned, the purpose of these angles or these planes is to identify the for scanning and imaging purposes. So your CAT scans, your PET scans, everything in between. I'm sorry. Now, the oblique one can be helpful for certain imaging, but we don't need to worry about it too much. Truth be told, this we should have a better understanding of. So, as far as the body cavities are concerned, for body cavities, I tend to think of like the cavities of our teeth. Different situation, but cavities of the teeth, if left untreated, will inevitably eat away at the enamel and can cause physical holes in the teeth. Well, holes is the key word there because we have these holes in the body that are filled with a bunch of organs. That's what we observe. So for us, what I want us to understand is what these cavities contain. So for instance, we have the cranial cavity. The cranial cavity, simply put, if you look at the dorsal side, the back side, there's not a lot of space, right? There's not a lot of room for things to be there. The cranial cavity, your cranium, what does it got? The brain. You move on down, we're going to have the vertebral cavity. The vertebral cavity is going to be home to the vertebral column, known as the spine. And what do we have in the spine? The spinal cord. Next, we have the thoracic cavity. The thoracic cavity, as we mentioned in our video previously, the thoracic area is your chest. So what do we find in the chest? Heart and lungs. Don't worry about diaphragm just yet. Diaphragm is a muscle that is incredibly important for breathing. We're going to learn about that in respiratory system. Abdominal cavity, one of the largest cavities found in the body. Let me recircle that because it was a little messy. Round two. One of the largest cavities found in the body is the abdominal cavity. As far as that's concerned, cut off a little bit of that other word, but it's okay. As far as that's concerned, it's going to contain your digestive viscera, aka digestive organs. So what do we mean by that? We're talking about your stomach, your pancreas, your large intestine, small intestine, things of that nature. Whereas you also have the kidneys, and then finally what's called the peritoneal cavity. We're going to get into that a little bit more later. Finally, you have our last cavity called the pelvic cavity. The pelvic cavity is the smallest of all the cavities we discussed. It's going to contain the bladder, obviously super important. It's also going to contain reproductive organs, both in men and women. Now, obviously, in men, those reproductive organs tend to be on the outside of the body, but there are some structures that are internal that are super important. And then it's also going to contain some of the digestive organs that are important too, like the rectum and anus as well. So overall, just be aware of what these cavities contain. That's important for us. Okay. Next. These other body cavities, we're going to learn a little bit further down the line. So we don't have to worry about them too much just yet, but I might as well talk about it. The oral cavity is obviously relating to the mouth. Nasal is the nose, which, by the way, if you ever look at any skeleton, you'll never see a nose on it. It's because the nose, the ears, a lot of tissue is cartilaginous. That stuff decomposes really rapidly when we perish. Orbital cavities is the eyes, middle ear cavity. You can kind of see it here. Doesn't really do it justice. The ears, we don't really see too much of it. This is the outer ear, but that's just really a small portion compared to the total ear, which a lot of it is inside of the skull. Finally, we have what's called synovial cavities. These are found in between the vertebrae. We're going to learn more about that. Plays a major role in spinal health. Okay. With this slide is really just to go over some basic concepts as far as being specific. So an example I mentioned in a video previously was, if you were in a surgery room and a surgeon said, here's your scalpel, make an incision in that there, just said, make an incision there. That's too vague. You need to be specific. So the good news is, in the instance where you have a patient come in, and let's say they have stomach pain, well, maybe that stomach pain is so serious that you need to do some sort of procedure. you should be able to identify, oh, well, the stomach is found near the epigastric region. Am I asking you to learn this for our unit, for high school level stuff? Not yet. We're not there at that point. That's a little more advanced. But the idea behind all of this is that every single human, regardless of the differences that we have similar anatomical shape and structure. We're very, very similar in the way we're designed. That said, we're also very sensitive too. I like to think of us like a very precise puzzle. You move one piece and it can really cause catastrophe for the body. Once again, this is kind of just going over those abdominal quadrants and the regions. One thing that is interesting and worth noting, so I'm going to go ahead and circle that for us real quick. You see how this says left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant, even though that's on the right side of the image? The reason for that is that all anatomical diagrams are going to be mirrored. You have to imagine it as if it's your body. Because if this is your body, then the left side is on the right side of the picture. Make sure you get that down. That can get a little confusing. Sometimes some people make some errors there, so just please make sure you're good with that. And other than that, that's it. Pretty short unit, as I mentioned. Generally speaking, most people do really well with this unit. I expect a lot of people to do really well. There's a crash course video that's an excellent review. It's about 11 minutes to go over everything that we covered in this beginning and just the starting point where we're at. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in. We'll have more videos in future units as we continue progressing. So thanks, guys. Have a good one.